Hee Haw was once the warm fire that brought laughter, country music, and unforgettable characters into countless homes for nearly 30 years. But did you know that many of the show's brightest stars passed away under tragic circumstances, from mysterious murders to sudden devastating illnesses? Let's uncover the legacy and shocking stories behind the legends of Hee Haw and honor what they left behind. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's go. Roy Clark as himself. Roy Linwood Clark was born on April 15, 1933, and became part of America's soul as the host of Hee Haw starting in 1969 when he was 36 years old. For nearly 3 decades, Roy's heartfelt smile, banjo in hand, and rustic humor were etched into the memories of millions. But behind that smile was a life full of scars. Born into a poor family, Roy's childhood was steeped in the hardship of the Great Depression. He was often mocked for playing country music, which made him shy and withdrawn, turning to music as his only refuge. The more famous he became, the more he used laughter to mask pain, until even he couldn't tell the difference between the performer and the man behind the curtain. In 1957, due to his habit of showing up late, Roy was abruptly fired by his mentor, Jimmy Dean. The blow felt like ice water on his artistic dreams. Though it should have been a major lesson, his erratic temper and rebellious attitude would continue to alienate colleagues in the years to come. Quietly, he began drinking heavily, what he called shutting off the noise of loneliness. By the late 1980s, alcoholism haunted Roy, damaging relationships and leading him to pass out backstage while applause still echoed from the stage. Roy's love life was equally troubled. His first marriage to Ruby Conley ended after just 3 years. Although his second marriage to Barbara Ruppard lasted until his death, their bond suffered from long stretches of emotional distance brought on by fame and Roy's refusal to confront feelings. Trying to be the happy man in public left him exhausted at home. He had 5 children, but was rarely a present father in their lives. On November 15, 2018, Roy Clark passed away at his home in Tulsa from complications of pneumonia when he was 85 years old. His estimated net worth of $10 million, built through decades of performances, TV appearances, and endorsements, could never make up for the loneliness he carried to the very end. Ronnie Stoneman as herself. Veronica Loretta Stoneman, better known as Ronnie Stoneman, was born on May 5, 1938, and earned the nickname First Lady of the Banjo. When she was 31 years old, she joined the cast of Hee Haw, helping shape the show's humorous spirit through her character, Ida Lee Nagger, a sharp-tongued wife clinging to her husband in skits that blended comedy with pain. With her banjo and Southern charm, Ronnie became the voice of rural America's working class. She was the 15th of 23 children born to legendary musician Pop Stoneman. Her childhood was filled with chaos, poverty, and strict discipline. In a household where music was survival, Ronnie was forced to practice endlessly, robbed of a real childhood. Her father's rigid expectations left her feeling like she always had to earn the right to exist. Every laugh she gave the audience came at the cost of memories she tried to bury. Nights falling asleep hungry, days of bleeding fingers from relentless rehearsals. After her father died in 1968, Ronnie tried to stand on her own, but a solo career proved difficult. Despite her fame on Hee Haw, she lived in the shadow of more famous male co-stars. Small-time gigs, meager paychecks, and quiet discrimination in the industry led her into long bouts of emotional crisis. She once said, "They paid me with laughter, but life demanded my whole heart." In her later years, Ronnie traveled local fairs with her sister Donna, the last surviving Stoneman sibling. Her health declined, but she still smiled for the crowds. Few knew that beneath thick stage makeup were fainting spells behind the curtain and cold nights sleeping in her car because she couldn't afford a room. When she died on February 22, 2024, When she was 85 years old, her net worth was estimated at around $1 million, a modest figure for someone who gave over 6 decades of her life to music and performance. Buck Owens as himself. Alvis Edgar. Buck Owens Jr. was born on August 12, 1929, and became a towering figure in country music when he began co-hosting Hee Haw in 1969, when he was 40 years old. With 21 #1 hits and the signature Bakersfield sound, Buck and his best friend Don Rich reshaped American music. But behind the glitter was a life filled with heartbreak, broken relationships, and a wound that never healed. Buck lived through passion, but slowly died in solitude. When Don Rich suddenly died in 1974, it wasn't just the loss of a musical partner. It was, in Buck's words, "The day music inside me died too." Creativity withered, recordings lost their spark, and though Hee Haw continued, Buck seemed like a ghost on autopilot. He grew distrustful, short-tempered, and many colleagues walked away. Former employees recalled how he often threatened them and created a climate of fear. His private life was equally rocky. 4 marriages, 3 ending in divorce, 1 annulled, marked a series of romantic failures Buck never fully understood. His first wife, Bonnie, left just as his career began. Later marriages were short-lived and fraught with conflict. At one point, he married violinist Jana Jay, only to file for annulment days later. After Hee Haw, Owens focused on business, buying multiple radio stations and building the Buck Owens Enterprises empire. Despite earning tens of millions through media ventures, he never reclaimed the one thing he had lost. Even his 1988 comeback duet with Dwight Yoakam, Streets of Bakersfield, felt like a final flicker. On March 25, 2006, after performing at the Crystal Palace, Buck Owens died of a heart attack in his sleep when he was 76 years old. He left behind a monumental musical legacy and a fortune estimated at $100 million. Merle Haggard as himself. Merle Haggard, born on April 6, 1937, made several memorable appearances on Hee Haw during the 1970s when he was in his 30s. He didn't play a fictional character. He played himself. And that was more than enough. With his weathered face, rebellious edge, and voice soaked in grit and regret, Merle embodied a kind of country music authenticity that couldn't be manufactured. His fiery ballads came from a place of real experience, from a man who had spent much of his early life living on the edge, far outside the boundaries of comfort or convention. But behind the fame and the outlaw mystique was a childhood scarred by trauma and hardship. When Merle was just 9 years old, his father passed away unexpectedly. That loss would shape much of his life. His mother, overwhelmed and grieving, became intensely strict. Merle, restless and angry, began running away from home as a teenager. He got into constant trouble, arrested over and over for petty crimes, fighting, and even escaping from juvenile detention. Eventually, he landed in San Quentin State Prison, one of the most notorious facilities in the country. It was there, behind bars, that he saw Johnny Cash perform for the inmates, an experience that lit a fire in him. That day, Merle made a promise to himself. When he got out, he would change. And he did. Music became his salvation. It was his confession booth, his therapy, and his redemption all rolled into one. With songs like Mama Tried, Sing Me Back Home, and Branded Man, Merle told stories not just of pain and rebellion, but of reflection and hard-won wisdom. He didn't just sing about sorrow, he made it beautiful, and in doing so, he gave it meaning. But no matter how high he climbed, some demons were always just behind him. Merle Haggard was married 5 times, and most of those relationships were marked by jealousy, infidelity, heartbreak, and emotional distance. He openly admitted to years of cocaine use, long bouts of depression, and times when he seriously considered ending his life. The applause never quite drowned out the echoes of his past. Even as he won 3 Grammy Awards, and even after being granted a full pardon by President Ronald Reagan, Merle remained a man carrying the emotional weight of everything he had survived. In his later years, Haggard was diagnosed with lung cancer, a battle that stretched on for many years. But even as the disease wore down his body, he refused to slow down. He continued to tour, to perform, and to connect with audiences. In some shows, he sang with an oxygen tank hidden beneath his shirt, just out of view. The show had to go on, and he gave everything he had until the very end. On April 6, 2016, his 79th birthday, Merle Haggard passed away peacefully at his home in California from complications of pneumonia. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at around $40 million. A respectable figure, yes, but one that hardly captures the value of what he left behind. String Bean as himself. David Ackerman, born on June 17, 1915, was known across America by the stage name String Bean, the lanky comic with an old banjo and trousers hanging below the knees. When he was 54 years old, he joined the cast of Hee Haw, bringing to life a unique persona, a scarecrow in a cornfield, dropping clever one-liners and reading letters from home in an awkward, endearing manner. But behind that gentle appearance lay a life soaked in sweat, sorrow, and blood. Born into poverty in Kentucky, Ackerman bartered a pair of chickens for his first banjo. Illiterate and self-reliant, he survived by playing music, performing comedy, and even playing semi-pro baseball. String Bean was never wealthy by Hollywood standards, but he became beloved for his simplicity and loyalty to the old-school banjo style. His marriage to Estelle Stanfill, his devoted wife, was once rumored to have hit rough patches, partly due to financial stress and his intensely private lifestyle. Having witnessed the banking collapses of the Great Depression, Ackerman had no trust in financial institutions. He kept all his money in cash, hidden in their small wooden house in Tennessee. Though his total assets were only around $2 million, rumors of cash in the walls circulated widely among entertainers, until fate set the stage for a horrifying ending. On the night of November 10, 1973, after performing at the Grand Ole Opry, String Bean and his wife returned home, unaware that 2 thieves were lying in wait. He was shot dead the moment he entered the house. Estelle screamed, begging for her life, but she was also gunned down. Their bodies were discovered the next morning by a neighbor, none other than fellow Hee Haw castmate Grandpa Jones. The brutal double murder shocked the nation, a frail performer slain over a few guns and a chainsaw. The killers, John and Marvin Brown, were convicted, though one wasn't paroled until 2014, over 40 years later. String Bean's death became a tragic symbol of innocence lost in a ruthless world. He and Estelle were buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Gardens in Goodlettsville, where fans still come, bringing letters from home. Minnie Pearl as herself. Sarah Ophelia Colley Cannon, born on October 25, 1912, won hearts when she transformed into Minnie Pearl. The charming country gal with a $1.98 price tag still dangling from her hat and the iconic greeting, "Howdy, I'm just so proud to be here." When she was 57 years old, she became the soul of Hee Haw, starting in 1969, continuing through 1991. But behind that grace and humor lay years of turmoil, illness, disappointment, and quiet loneliness. As she entered the world of performing, she had to do it all herself, traveling the South as a performer, director, and survivor on the smallest of stages. Her first major setback came in the late 1960s when she lent her name to the Minnie Pearl's fried chicken restaurant chain. Though she had no role in management, a financial and stock manipulation scandal destroyed her reputation. Dragged into investigations and publicly shamed, she spent years filled with guilt and a sense of betrayal. Her marriage to Henry Cannon, a former fighter pilot who became her manager and lifelong companion, seemed stable but developed silent cracks over time. After decades together, what remained between them was quiet distance and unspoken solitude. Without children, she poured everything into the stage. But that devotion came at a steep cost. Her greatest pain struck in the early 1990s when Minnie was diagnosed with breast cancer. Chemotherapy, radiation, and a double mastectomy shattered her physically and emotionally. Even so, with extraordinary strength, she became a beacon of courage in the fight against cancer. She served as the spokesperson for a cancer center that would eventually bear her name and expand across the U.S. and the U.K. During this period, she lived off a net worth estimated at around $5 million. In June 1991, a sudden stroke ended her ability to perform. Her final years were spent at a nursing home in Nashville, visited by friends and younger artists, but the stage lights were gone for good. On March 4, 1996, she passed away at age 83 after another stroke, Grandpa Jones as himself. Louis Marshall, Grandpa Jones, born on October 20, 1913, became an indispensable part of Hee Haw starting in 1969 when he was 56 years old. With his banjo in hand, joyful yodels, and the catchphrase "outrageous," he brought down-home laughter for over 2 decades. But behind the rural grandpa makeup was an artist who had faced grinding poverty, mental strain, and a quiet, fading end. The youngest of 10 children in a sharecropping family, Grandpa Jones faced hardship from the start. He learned music from his parents and jumped into radio shows to survive. His early career was rocky, moving town to town, changing stations, sometimes borrowing money just to keep performing. During World War II, he paused his music career to serve in the military. When he returned, youth had passed, fame had eluded him, and money remained scarce. His moody, off-stage temperament earned him the nickname Grandpa when he was only 22 years old. His marriage to fellow artist Ramona Riggins was a rare bright spot. They performed together for more than 30 years, but even that love faced pressures from health problems and financial worries. In later years, Jones became more reclusive, making fewer public appearances. He suffered from ongoing health issues, high blood pressure, vision loss, and occasionally slipped into quiet depression. A devastating moment came in 1973 when he discovered the murdered bodies of his close friend, David Stringbean Ackerman, and Ackerman's wife. The trauma shattered him. He not only became the trial's key witness, but also carried the grief of losing chosen family. That blow made him quieter, harder, and even more distant from fame, despite being inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. In January 1998, after performing one final time at the Grand Ole Opry, his cherished stage, Jones suffered 2 massive strokes. Less than a month later, on February 19th, he passed away at age 84 in a nursing home in Hermitage, Tennessee. His net worth at the time was estimated at $2 million, a modest sum for a lifetime of tireless performance, even if he was never a top-selling star. George Jones as himself. Louis Marshall. Grandpa Jones, born on October 20, 1913, became a vital part of the television show Hee Haw in 1969, when he was 56 years old. With his banjo in hand, vibrant yodeling, and cheeky grin, he embodied the lovable country grandpa, reviving the spirit of old-school country music. But behind the laughter and straw hat was a lonely soul, who had tasted both glory and immense loss. A childhood of poverty in a large sharecropping family forced Jones into survival mode early on. Music became his only path out. Despite reaching milestones like the Grand Ole Opry and the Hall of Fame, he lived frugally and constantly worried about money. This instability strained his home life with his wife, fellow performer Ramona Riggins. Though they shared the stage for over 3 decades, they struggled with intense schedules and declining health. The greatest heartbreak came in 1973 when Jones discovered his dear friend, David Stringbean Akeman, and Akeman's wife had been murdered in their nearby home. The event haunted him. He withdrew, became quieter, and struggled with sleepless nights tormented by the memory. In his final years, Jones lived in Ridgetop with his wife, but aging brought a cascade of health issues: heart failure, high blood pressure, and signs of early memory loss. After his final performance at the Grand Ole Opry in January 1998, he suddenly collapsed from 2 consecutive strokes. Despite medical efforts, he passed away just weeks later, on the evening of February 19th, at McKendree Village Nursing Home, when he was 84 years old. At the time of his death, Jones's net worth was around $2 million, a small figure compared to the rich artistic legacy he left behind. Tammy Wynette as herself. Tammy Wynette, born on May 5, 1942, rose to fame with her guest appearances on Hee Haw when she was 27 years old, playing herself, a country singer who captivated audiences with her heartfelt and emotional ballads. Her life story is one of poignant tragedy and unexpected twists. From picking cotton in Mississippi as a poor girl, Tammy chased her dream of music, teaching herself piano by ear and singing gospel songs to feed her children at a young age. Her life was marked by stormy marriages, first to Eupil Bird, ending in heartbreak, depression, and electroshock therapy, then to Don Chappell, a chaos of lawsuits and nude photo scandals. Third, her fiery romance with George Jones, filled with arguments, addiction, and even a gunshot wound, ending in divorce in 1975. Tammy then married Michael Tomlin, only to annul the marriage after 6 weeks, and later wed George Ritchie, who was later accused of emotional abuse and financial control, leading to Tammy's dependence on strong medication in her final years. Her struggles extended beyond her personal life. Though she was known as the First Lady of Country Music, with 20 #1 singles including the controversial Stand By Your Man, fame brought heavy backlash. Under pressure, she developed chronic abdominal pain after a hysterectomy and underwent numerous surgeries, becoming dependent on Demerol, Valium, and Dilaudid. On April 6, 1998, Tammy Wynette passed away at age 55 in Nashville from a pulmonary blood clot after years of battling chronic illnesses and painkiller dependency. She was buried at Woodlawn Memorial Park, where her grave marker was controversially changed to read Virginia W. Richardson, her married name, until a family and fan petition restored it to Tammy Wynette. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at $10 million, a modest figure for a woman whose influence helped shape the country music landscape. Loretta Lynn as herself. Loretta Lynn, born on April 14, 1932, began appearing on Hee Haw in the early 1970s when she was in her 40s, portraying herself, a fearless, down-to-earth country singer who delivered raw, unfiltered songs rooted in real life. Behind the spotlight was a life filled with tears. Born into poverty in Kentucky's coal country, Loretta married at 15 and became a mother at 16. Her 50-year marriage to Oliver Doolittle Lynn was a stormy mix of love, betrayal, violence, and alcoholism. Doolittle cheated often and at times physically abused her, yet he also bought her first guitar and pushed her into the limelight. Fame came early but did little to ease her pain. She lost 2 of her children, one in an accident, another to drug addiction. That grief stayed with Loretta for life, and her music became more truthful and somber because of it. Songs like Coal Miner's Daughter, You Ain't Woman Enough, and Don't Come Home a-Drinkin' weren't just hits. They were cries for help and anthems for silenced women. In 2017, Loretta suffered a major stroke, followed by a hip fracture from a fall. Though she could no longer perform on stage, she continued to release music and publish books. On October 4th, 2022, Loretta Lynn passed away peacefully in her sleep at her home in Hurricane Mills, Tennessee, at the age of 90. Her net worth at the time was estimated at $65 million. Junior samples as himself. Junior Samples, born Alvin Samples. Junior, on August 10, 1926, became an iconic comedic presence on Hee Haw beginning in 1969 when he was 43 years old. Playing himself, a bumbling, slow-talking used car salesman, he brought laughter to millions for 14 years. But behind the laughter was a life far from easy. Junior only finished 6th grade and grew up in poverty, working as a carpenter and racing cars to make ends meet. His big break came from an exaggerated story about catching a giant fish, which turned him into a radio sensation. However, the sudden fame left him struggling to manage both his public image and his family life. He battled a severe drinking problem, which led to frequent fights, anger, and loneliness. Despite having 5 children with his wife, Grace Bolton, family relations were often tense. He missed key moments in his children's lives, a fact that quietly tormented him, even as he kept a cheerful front on TV. Though beloved on screen, Junior remained deeply self-conscious about his background and his weight, which reached nearly 400 pounds. That weight, along with unhealthy habits, contributed to the heart attack that suddenly ended his life on November 13, 1983, when he was just 57 years old. His death stunned the Southern entertainment world, and his funeral, led by close friend Reverend Douglas Collins, drew hundreds of mourners. At the time of his death, Junior Samples' net worth was only about $1 million, a modest sum considering his widespread impact. Archie Campbell as himself. Archie Campbell was born on November 7, 1914. When he was 55 years old, he joined the cast of Hee Haw as himself, a charming, down-to-earth, and clever comedian. With iconic skits like PFT, You Was Gone, Rinder Sella, and That's Bad, That's Good, he became an irreplaceable part of the show for nearly 2 decades, helping define Hee Haw's signature brand of rustic wit. But beyond the stage lights, Campbell's life wasn't all laughter. A multi-talented artist, actor, musician, writer, and script editor, he carried an enormous creative workload that few ever saw. The constant demands of writing, filming, and maintaining a public image often pushed him to the brink of exhaustion, especially when critics claimed he was being overshadowed by bigger stars like Roy Clark and Buck Owens. Campbell was private about his personal life. Some colleagues hinted at tensions between him and his wife due to his relentless travel schedule, which kept him away from home for long stretches. That isolation slowly wore down his spirit. Even after being named Comedian of the Year by the CMA in 1969, he often withdrew quietly into the background. In his final years, Campbell sought balance through golf and painting, 2 personal passions that offered him a brief escape from the grind of show business. He even opened an art gallery, helped manage a school in Knoxville, and pioneered the first lighted golf course in the United States. But his health began to falter. On August 29, 1987, Archie Campbell died of a sudden heart attack at the age of 72. People across Tennessee were stunned. Dr. Campbell had never shown signs of collapse. At the time of his passing, Archie Campbell's net worth was estimated at around $2 million, earned through hit comedy albums, TV appearances, writing, and his personal art ventures. The stars of Hee Haw left behind an unforgettable legacy, but their tragedies remind us that behind every laugh, there are stories filled with tears. Who was your favorite Hee Haw personality, and how did it feel to learn the truth behind their fate? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another moving story.